Good morning, student. Today's topic is the prototype model and the rapid application development model. So these two models are used when the customer has little knowledge about the requirement, or the customer has no knowledge or very poor knowledge about the requirement, that what the customer want in his or her software, and what requirement should he tell to the software engineer or developer to develop the software. So let's start with it. Prototype model is applied when detailed information related to input and output requirement of system is not available. When the requirement is not being provided by the uh, you can say customer to software developer or software engineer. So when there's very poor knowledge of the requirement analysis by the customer to the software developer, then we use the prototype model. So prototype model is applied when detailed information related to input and output requirements of system is not available to the software developer. In this model, it is assumed that all the requirements may not be known at the start. So because the customer has no knowledge about the requirements, so it means 100% requirements are not being provided to the software developer. So software development doesn't have all knowledge of the requirement at the start of the development of the software. So in this model, it is assumed that all the requirements may not be known at the start of the development of the system or software. It is usually used when system does not exist or in case of large or complex system where there is no manual process to determine the requirements. So you want to develop a new software that is not existable in the market. If it is not existable in the market, you have no knowledge. You're just giving some assumption to the software developer. On that assumptions, he will start developing the program, start developing the software. That what type of requirement are being uh, required by the customer. He will judge the customer by himself. The software developer will judge the customer by himself, and on the basis of that judgment, he will start developing the program. And once he develops the program, we call it as a prototype. We call it as a prototype. Whatever he has developed, whatever software developer has developed, he will show the prototype to the customer. The customer will use that prototype as a virtual software and use all the functions that are being generated by the software developer. And if that functions or the prototype fulfill the requirements of the software, then we will say that it is prepared. Else, if it is not fulfilling all the requirement of the software, the customer will again tell the software developer that kindly add these things in the software or kindly remove these things from the software. I want some few changes over here. On the basis of that changes, a new prototype is being generated. So the software developer keep on generating the new prototype until unless the customer gets satisfied with the software. So it is usually used when system does not exist or in case of large or complex systems where there is no manual process for determining the requirements. So as because there is no requirement by the customer, the software has to make all the decisions by himself. In this model allow the user to interact and experiment with the working of the model of the system known as prototype. As I used the word earlier, prototype means uh, on the first phase that the software developer developed the software by judging the requirement of the customer. He will develop a software. Whatever software the software developer will develop, we call it as a prototype. So that software become a model. This model allows the user to interact with experiment. What experiment? The software developer has developed with the working model of the system, that is working model of software known as prototype. So whatever software is being generated by the software developer, we call it as a prototype. And the prototype gives the user an actual feel of the system. That prototype will the customer will run that prototype, that it is actual software that he asks to develop, asks the software developer to develop, and he or she will run it, and we will check. He will check that whether he's satisfied with all the activities, all the functions of the software. On the basis of that, they move to the next stage. At any stage, if the user is not satisfied in the prototype, and the user is or the customer is running the prototype, and the customer is using it, if the customer or user is not satisfied with the prototype at any stage, it can be discarded. So the customer will say that I don't like this prototype. Kindly make some changes over there. It can be discarded and an entirely new system can be developed. Again, the customer will give the few you can say changes over there that I don't like this thing. Kindly remove it. I like this thing, but kindly add some few feature over here also. So if you make some changes over there by addition or deletion of the features, it will become automatically new prototype. Fine. So the old one get discarded and you have developed the new prototype. And development of the prototype obviously undergoes design. Again, you have to go for designing of the prototype, new prototype. Again, you have to go for the coding of the prototype, and again you have to go for testing of the prototype. Whatever changes that software that customer has told software developer to make in the prototype, that were discarded. But each of these phases is not done very formally or thoroughly. Uh, this is, you can say, the model of the prototype model. At the very initial stage, the software developer will interact with the customer and ask the customer, kindly give me your requirements. As I told you earlier, that the customer has least requirements. He has very few knowledge about what he or she wants to develop. So whatever little few percent of requirement the customer is having, 20-30%, the customer will provide that 20-30% requirements to the software developer. On the basis of that requirement, the software developer will draw a design. You can say either flowchart, DFD, algorithm, and on the basis of that design, whatever design is being generated by the software developer, then his team will start converting that design to coding. And once the coding is being started and it being done, they go for the testing, that whatever few percent of requirement are being given by the customer, does our software satisfy all the requirements. That is being done in the case of testing. So this one big rectangle, we call it as a prototype, because one of the tasks is being done. What task? Requirement analysis, design, coding, and testing are being done. All phases are being done. Software is generated. That software is known as prototype. Now the customer will interact with this prototype. This big rectangle we call it a prototype, because now software generated is being tested also. After testing the prototype, either the customer will accept it or the customer will say, no, I don't like this thing. Kindly make some changes. What changes? Again, the customer will tell the software designer or developer to make some changes over there. On the basis of changes again, new design is being generated. And from that new design, a new coding is also being done again. Fine. Once the new coding is done, is prepared, and again testing is being performed. Whatever the new requirements are being asked by the uh, customer. Again, after testing, a new prototype will be generated. The prototype one. Again, customer will check the prototype, whether the prototype is working properly, whatever his wishes, his or her wishes are. And again, if the customer is not satisfied, again the prototype will be discarded. Again, the customer will give some more requirements to the application developer. Again, new design will be made. Again, coding is being done. Again, testing will be performed. So this is how the prototype model works under the case of prototype model. Okay, एक बार फिर से शुरू करते हैं कि prototype model is applied when detailed. Okay, after this prototype model, the development of the prototype starts when preliminary version of the requirement specification document has been developed. When the software developer interact with the customer at the initial stage, the customer will provide some of the requirements to the software developer, 20-30% requirements. Whatever requirements are being given to the software developer by the customer, the software developer will generate SRS, software requirement specification document. And after that, preparing that document, the software developer will start developing the software or prototype. After a prototype has been developed, the end user and the client or the customer are given an opportunity to use a prototype and play with it. Once the software developer generated the prototype, he will allow the customer or client or the end user to access that prototype and run the prototype as per their inputs and as per their required outputs. If all the necessary input are being accepted by the prototype and all the required outputs are being generated by the prototype, then the customer or client will be satisfied. Else, the client or customer will provide some document to the software developer that what is missing over here, what should be changed, what should be new added, and what is not required. So the customer will provide some feedback to the software developer, on the basis of which the software developer will again create or develop the new prototype. So the end user or the client get an opportunity to use the prototype. So they will run the prototype as per the requirements and provide the feedback to developer. After using the prototype, the customer or client will provide the feedback to the software developer. What that feedback will have, it will have what is correct in the current prototype, with which the customer is happy and satisfied, and that that particular part fulfill the requirements of the customer. Second is what need to be modified, because 100% requirements are not being provided to the software developer by the uh, customer. It means there might be something is being that developed that is not 100% satisfy the requirement of the customer. So the customer will ask the software developer to make some changes in particular module of the software. The next, the customer provide what is missing. Again, because at an early stage, the customer was unable to provide all the 100% requirements. So definitely something is being missed by the software developer also. So the customer will ask the software developer that some of the required things are being missing in the prototype. So he will mention, highlight what are the missing things are, and finally the customer will provide the information to the software developer that you have added something to the software or prototype that is not required from my side. So I need not need these operations, these modules. You can kindly remove all these modules. So on the basis of these four factors, what is correct, what is no, need to be modified, what is missing, what is not needed, on the basis of this feedback, the software developer will again generate or develop a new prototype and again ask the customer or client to access the prototype, play with it, and again provide the feedback to the software developer. This process will keep on going until unless the customer will get 100% satisfied with the prototype. Once the customer is satisfied with the prototype, the software developer will generate or install or implement the software and hand it over to the customer. So this is how it works in the case of prototype model. So based on the feedback, the prototype is modified. The end user client are again allowed to access the system or software or prototype. This is how the working of the uh, prototype model works under the case of prototype model in software development. So what are the advantages? This model is flexible in design because it can be easily changed as per the requirement of the customer. So we can easily change the requirements. So it's a flexible design of the model. It is easy to detect errors. So because you are developing the software slowly and steadily, uh, you have some make the sub modules of the project. You design the first module, you will find the errors over there. Then the second module, find the errors over there. So because 100% requirements are not there, few percent requirements are there, it means the size of the software definitely is small. If the size is small, it is easy to find the errors. We can find missing functionality easily. So what is missing over there, that is being we can collect it from the feedback that is being provided by the customer. So the customer will provide what is missing over there, what is not functioning properly, what is not required. There is a scope of refinement. It means new requirements can be easily accommodated. Definitely, when the customer will provide the feedback, it means some refinement must be required to reframe the you can say the software, and it means that new requirement can be easily accommodated. You can add new requirements of the customer into the prototype and generate the new prototype. It can be reused by the developer or for more complicated projects in future use. Once you have designed the prototype, that prototype can again be used by some other client or customer uh, with some additional features. So instead of generating again the same thing, you already have that prototype. You can collect the prototype and add the new feature as per the requirement of the customer to that existing prototype. So it means you already have the prototype in your office, so you can use the prototype and save the time for developing the prototype again. It ensure a greater level of customer satisfaction and comfort because in this case every time once you generate the prototype, you ask the customer or client to access the prototype. It means the customer is interacting with the software that is being developed by the software developer before implementation of it. So it means the once the customer gets satisfied, only then the software is implemented in the market. Else, you keep on updating the prototype. It means once the satisfaction of the customer is an important point over here. When the customer gets satisfied and comfort with all the functionalities of the software, only then the software is being implemented. It helps the developer and end user to both understand system better because the end user or customer has to provide the feedback. The customer can provide feedback only once he or she understands system or prototype better. So once the customer understands system better, he or she will provide the feedback, and on the basis of feedback again the software developer will again understand what is missing in the system and what should be done more specific to polish the software much better. So it means on the both side, developer side and the end user or customer side, both understand the system or software much better. Finally, it can actively involve user in the development phase. So the development phase means once a prototype is being developed, again some changes are being required. Second prototype will be developed, third prototype will be developed. So in every prototype development, the involvement of the user is always there. So these are some of the advantages of the prototype model. If there are advantages, definitely the disadvantages also exist. The the prototype is slow and time taking process because each time the customer will keep on saying that I'm not satisfied, I'm not satisfied. So it will take a lot of time to develop the software, as well as slow process to develop the software. So it will take a lot of time. Definitely, it will become slow. The cost of developing prototype is total waste of prototype is ultimately throwaway because once you develop the prototype and the customer said I am not satisfied with the prototype, it means the time being spent to develop the prototype and the cost that is being you can say utilized by the developer totally gets waste because the customer said I don't want the prototype, throw it away, again generate the new one, again you will spend some money and the cost will be generated and time will be utilized to generate the second prototype. So it will keep on going until unless the customer will say I'm satisfied with a particular prototype. Prototyping may encourage excessive change request. Again, once you ask the customer, tell me your changes, the customer will never be satisfied. The customer can never be satisfied. The customer will keep on asking change. It means the prototype may encourage excessive change of request. So that will make time consumption of the development of software. Unwillingness of customer to participate in an iteration cycle for the longer time duration. Actually, the customer is satisfied with the prototype, but still, uh, the customer will say that I'm not satisfied because that unwillingness will create the wastage of time and cost. There may be far too many variations in software requirements when each time the prototype is validated by the customer. So in every prototype, there might be change in the requirement of the customers. Earlier, there are requirements having, let's say, 5 requirements are there. The next requirement can be similar or totally different from the earlier requirements. So there will be a huge variation in the requirements of the software in case of prototype model. Poor documentation because the requirement of customer are changing. The software developer generates software requirement specification document during the first phase. Again, in the second prototype prototype development, again the requirement got changed. The software developer generate a new requirement document, so it will totally waste of time and poor documentation will be generated if we keep on changing the requirements of the customer. It is very difficult for the software developer to accommodate at all the changes demanded by the client. So it is difficult for the software developer to accept all the frequent changes of the customer. The developer also got irritated that they keep on changing the uh, requirements and uh, telling me that all my efforts are being wasted, of no use. Definitely, if you make some good effort and someone said that it is of no use, you get hurt. So definitely, software developer got hurt when the customer said it's totally waste, throw it away. So accommodation among the customer and the software developer will become difficult. After seeing an early prototype model, the customer may think that the actual product will be delivered to him soon. So uh, yeah, the customer will keep on changing the requirements, and one side he or she keep on changing the requirement, and on other side he want that give me my product as early as possible. How it can be possible to give you the product as early as possible if you keep on changing the requirements? So in this case it is difficult to satisfy the customer also. So these are some of the few disadvantages and advantages of the prototype model. The next model is the rapid application development model. So the rapid application development model is based on the prototyping and iterative development with no specific planning involved. In the rapid application development model is a model when the customer has no knowledge about the requirements of the software that he want to develop by the customer developer. Let's say that I am a customer, I'm having a restaurant, and I ask the software developer, can you develop a software for my restaurant? That's it. No requirements from my side. So all the requirements are being generated by the developer himself or herself. And by generating the requirement himself or herself, the software developer will go for all other processes for the function development, software development. Okay. Uh, uh, the rapid application development model was proposed by IBM in 1980. The process of developing software involves planning required for developing the product. So, in the rapid application development model, uh, in RAD, the component or functions are developed in parallel. So, if my software is having four functions, then four teams are being required to develop all the functions, and all functions will develop parallelly. So in this case, the sequence is not used at first with well the first function, the second, and third and fourth. This will not happen over here. All the four functions will start at same time, and all the function will perform all the activities as per the requirements. So next is the customer provide quick feedback regarding the delivery and their requirements. In every phase of the development, the customer is interacting with the software developer. So if we go for the first phase, we cannot move the second first until unless the customer is satisfied in the first phase. Once the customer is satisfied in the first phase, only then the software developer will move to the second phase. It means so there is least risk of failure of first phase, because after satisfaction of the customer in the first phase, the developer go to the second phase. Again, the customer will interact in the second phase also. Again, once the customer gets satisfied, the developer will move to the third phase. Again, the customer is involved in the third phase development also. Again, once the customer satisfied, then the developer will go to the fourth phase. It means we cannot say that the previous phase is not satisfied by the customer because he don't like the prototype. No, because the customer is 100% involved in the development of the software in rapid application development model. So rapid application development is a software development methodology that uses minimum planning in favor of rapid prototyping for the component of the product or software, because there's no requirement that are being given to the software developer by the customer. It means no planning are being made by the software developer. Is the instant programming method in which the developer will generate the ideas and start developing the software by himself. The in the rapid application development model, the functionality of modules are developed in parallel. So I told you earlier that if there are four modules, four functions, all will develop at parallel. Since there is no detailed pre-planning, it make it easier to incorporate the changes in the development process. So it will be easy to make the changes in the development at every phase of of the development of the software in the rapid application development model. In RAD project, have small teams comprising the developers, domain expert, customer representative, and other IT resources. So when we are the team is developing the software, each team involves the expert of the that developing the software, then expert of that particular domain, then a person who will allow the customer to interact with the software developer, and other IT resources were people that will have to generate or develop the software. So when the rapid application development model is required, when the customer has no knowledge of software development, reasonable when no requirements are there. So the requirements keep on adding as we keep on developing the software. User involved throughout the life cycle. In each and every phase of development of the software, the user is involved in every phase of software development. Functionality deliver is incremented. Low technical risk because once the customer satisfied in the first level, then they move to second level. The customer satisfied second level, they move to third level. It means the risk factor is least over there. The customer cannot say that I'm not satisfied in the previous level. After satisfaction, they move to the next level. And system can be modularized. We can say make partitioning of system in different modules. So next is the development life cycle of the rapid application development model. In the life cycle, we have business modeling, data modeling, process modeling, application generation, and testing and turnover. So what is business modeling? The business model for the product under the development is designed in terms of flow of information, how the information will flow in the software, like you have say the DFD, distribution of information between various business channels, how the information is being distributed to the various modules of the particular function or particular software. A complete business analysis is performed to find the vital information for the business. As the customer is involved in every phase of software development life cycle, it means complete information is being gathered from the customer that either you are satisfied with all the activities that are being performed by software developer, how the information can be obtained, how they will obtain the information. They can obtain the information from outside resources, the person who has already done the same thing. How and when information can be processed, if they have the information, when they will utilize the information, and what pattern they will use the information. What are the factors driving successful flow of information? What factor they will use to make the information flow in a better manner in software development. Next is data modeling. The information gathered in the business modeling phase is reviewed and analyzed to form set of data objects vital to the business. Once information is gathered, then they will divide the information in the various modules, and they will provide the information to each and every module as per the requirement. The attributes of all data sets is identified and defined. Each and every module define all the data, and the relation between these data objects are established and defined in detail in the relevance to the business model. Each and every data is provided to different modules, and all the modules are related to each other. Nesting the processing model, the data objects sets defined in the data modeling phase are converted into established the business information flow needed to achieve the specific business objective as per the business model. So once you collect the information, you distribute the data, and the data are being used as per the requirement of that model to make some specific task. The process model for any changes or enhancement to the data set can be defined in this phase. If the data is quite enough for the development, then fine. If not satisfied, not 100% full data, then what is the requirement for the data will be delivered to the software developer. And the process description for adding, deleting, retrieving, or modifying data objects are being given. So what new data is being required, what data is not being needed, you can delete it. What data you want to retrieve from the data set, and what modification you want to need in the data in the case of process modeling. And finally, you have the application generation. The 4 generation technique is being used over here in the application generation. The actual system is built, and coding is done by the using automatic tools to convert the process and data model into actual prototype. So in the fourth generation technique means the no need to go for the whole coding by itself. The frameworks are being provided to software developer, which will make the you can say least time to develop the software, because the frameworks are being already generated developed. Only the required variables are being added by the software developer. So this will reduce the time of software generation. And after development of the software, the testing will be done on the software. The overall testing time is reduced in the rapid application development model, as the prototypes are independently tested during the every iteration, because in each and every phase the customer is involved in the development of every phase. Once the customer is satisfied with the first phase, then they go to the second phase. Once the customer is satisfied with the second phase, go to the third phase. It means that testing will take less time, and it is being done independently by the customer as well as by the software developer. However, data flow and the interfaces between all the components need to be thoroughly tested with the complete test coverage. So if you have four teams used to develop the four functions or four modules, the interaction among the four modules is also very much important. Until unless the four modules or four functions are interacting with each other, you cannot develop the whole software. One function has to accept the parameters of second function and give some return value to the first function, so that they can interact with each other properly to give the proper output of the software. Since most of the programming components have already been tested, it reduces the risk of major issues. So while software development, most of the testing is being done by software developer as well as by the customer. So in this case, least risk are being occurred during the testing in software testing in the rapid application development model. This is the diagram of the model. So in this model, each and every phase, business modeling, data modeling, process modeling, application generation and testing, in each and every phase, the customer as well as the uh, uh, software developer are involved in each development of each and every phase. So in business modeling, the customer is there as well as software developer is there. In data modeling, customer is there, and software developer is there. Similarly, in process modeling, customer is involved in development as well as the software developer. Application generation, software customer is there as well as the software developer is there. And finally, in case of testing, again, customer is involved over here as well as software developer is involved over here. It means in each and every phase, the customer is involved over here. And three teams are being used over here because three modules are being developed parallelly. Three modules are being developed parallelly. It means three teams are required because one team cannot do the work parallelly. So it means to do the work parallelly, we require three teams because three modules are being used over here in the development of the rapid application development model. So we mentioned over here three teams and all team performing the same function for development of the module. Fine. Uh, and what are advantages? The process of application development and delivery are fast because all the work is being done in parallel. This model is flexible if any changes are required, because the customer is also involved in the development of each and every phase, so the changes can be easily done. A review are taken from the client at the steering of development. Hence, there are less chances of missing the requirement because the customer is involved in every phase. So they can gather the review from the client, and because the client is also involved in development, because the client or customer is keep on steering how it is being developed in each and every phase. So the requirements, missing chance or requirement is least over. So due to prototyping in nature, there is possibility of lesser defects because each and every time the prototype is being generated, after prototype is generated, the customer will check whether it's as per the requirements. And once the prototype is satisfied by the customer, the software is being installed in the launch in the market. So if they have advantages, definitely the RAD has some disadvantages. The feedback from the user is required at every development phase. Again, every phase the uh, customer has to give the feedback, which is a time consuming concept, which will make the little bit more time consumption in the software development. This model is not good choice for long term and large projects. So for long and large project, it's not good, not recommended because it is time consuming consumption concept. Require highly skilled designer or developer because frequent change in the requirement of the customer, they have to make frequent changes, and for to make frequent and correct changes, highly skilled developer and designer are used over here for development of the rapid application development model. So this is how it works.